Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the U.E.'s Valiant. The ship was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers and the gentle beeping of monitors. His crew worked at their stations, checking the empty space around them for anything unusual. Jake liked these quiet moments. Space was big and mostly empty, but it was never boring. Every day brought something new. Today felt different, though. He could not explain why, but something in the air made him feel like change was coming. "Commander," called Lisa Grant from her station. She was the communications officer, the person who listened for messages from other ships and planets. Her voice sounded worried. "I'm getting something strange on the emergency channels." Jake turned to look at her. Lisa was young, but very good at her job. If she said something was strange, it usually was. What kind of strange? "It's not human, sir. The signal is coming from far away, and it's not in any language our computers know." Lisa pressed some buttons on her console. "Should I put it through the speakers?" "Yes, let's hear it." The bridge filled with sounds that no human had ever heard before. It was like music mixed with clicking noises and low humming sounds. The ship's computer tried to understand what the sounds meant, but it took a long time. Finally, words appeared on the main screen. The computer had figured out what the alien voices were saying. Jake read the words out loud so everyone could hear. "Them. This is Researcher Veltar of the Catherian Expedition. Our colony is under attack by the hegemony. They are killing everyone. We cannot escape. If anyone gets this message, please remember us." The bridge became very quiet. Nobody moved or spoke for several seconds. Jake felt his stomach drop. Someone out there was asking for help, and they sounded scared. "Where is this coming from?" Jake asked. Lieutenant Danny Clark was the tactical officer. His job was to watch for danger and figure out where things were in space. He looked at his screens and typed on his keyboard. "The signal started in the Kepler 442 system, Commander. That's about 40 light years from here. It's way out in unexplored space." Jake knew the rules. Humans were not supposed to get involved in fights between alien species. The government said it was too dangerous and not their business. But listening to the voice on the radio made him feel sick. These were not soldiers fighting other soldiers. These were families being hurt by bullies. "Lisa, get me fleet command. Use the emergency frequency." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Soon, the face of Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the main screen. She was Jake's boss and one of the toughest people he knew. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes looked serious. "Commander Morrison, what's the emergency?" Jake told her about the alien message. He played the recording so she could hear it herself. As the desperate voices filled the command room back on Earth, Jake watched the Admiral's face get harder and angrier. "How many ships does this hegemony have?" she asked. Danny looked at his readings. "Hard to tell from here, Admiral. But the energy signatures suggest a lot of big ships. Much bigger than ours." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Jake could see her thinking. Finally, she spoke. "Commander, you are authorized to investigate. But Jake," she used his first name, which she never did unless things were very serious, "be careful. If these hegemony people are as bad as they sound, you might be flying into a trap. Understood, Admiral?" "What about the non-interference policy?" The Admiral's face got even more serious. "Sometimes, Commander, doing the right thing matters more than following rules. If innocent people are being killed, we can't just ignore it. But don't start a war you can't finish." The connection ended, and Jake was left staring at a blank screen. He turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. "Set course for Kepler 442, he said. "Maximum speed." The ship's engines got louder as they changed direction. Jake could feel the slight pull as the Valiant turned toward the distant star system. In a few hours, they would jump to hyperspace and travel faster than light to reach the aliens who needed help. "Commander," said Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the ship's science officer, "what if it's too late when we get there?" Jake thought about that. Space was huge, and even traveling faster than light took time. The message they heard might be hours or even days old. The people calling for help might already be dead. Then, "We'll make sure someone pays for it," Jake said quietly as the Valiant prepared to jump to hyperspace. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He opened a channel to Earth and recorded a message. "This is Commander Morrison of the U.E.'s Valiant. We are responding to a distress call from an alien species under attack. If something happens to us, make sure Earth knows that there are people out here who kill innocent families for fun. Don't let them get away with it." He sent the message and sat back in his chair. Through the main window, he could see stars starting to stretch into lines as the ship prepared to jump. Soon they would know what was happening in that distant system. Jake had a feeling that humanity was about to learn something important about the galaxy they lived in, and he was pretty sure they were not going to like what they found. The Valiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge stop breathing for a moment. "Oh my God," whispered Dr. Amy Rodriguez from her science station. Her face was white as she looked at her computer screens. "Commander, you need to see this." Jake Morrison moved to stand behind her chair. The main screen showed 3 planets that should have been full of life. Instead, he was looking at death. The first planet was covered in black smoke. The whole world looked like it was burning. Amy's computers said the air was full of poison and ash. Nothing could live there now. The second planet was worse. Huge scars ran across its surface, like someone had taken a giant knife to it. Where cities used to be, there was only glass that had been melted by terrible heat. The oceans were boiling. The third planet was still under attack. Jake could see ships in orbit around it, firing weapons down at the surface. Big explosions lit up the planet like deadly fireworks. How many people lived here? Jake asked quietly. Amy checked her readings. Her hands were shaking. "The computer says there were about 8 billion people on each planet, Commander. That's 24 billion total." Lieutenant Danny Clark was watching the enemy ships through his tactical systems. "Sir, I count 50 enemy vessels. They're huge. Each one is bigger than anything we have. And they're not fighting other ships. They're just shooting at the planet." Lisa Grant was listening to radio signals from the dying world. Tears ran down her face as she worked. "I'm picking up voices from the surface. The aliens are called Cytherians. They're begging for help. They say they never hurt anyone. They don't even have weapons." Jake watched one of the enemy ships target a group of small ships trying to escape from the planet. The small ships looked like lifeboats full of families running for their lives. The big enemy ship fired once, and all the small ships disappeared in a flash of light. "They're hunting refugees," said Ryan Blake, the ship's security chief. His voice was full of anger. "Those weren't military targets. Those were just people trying to escape." Jake felt sick. These hegemony aliens were not just winning a war. They were having fun killing innocent people. It was like watching someone step on ants just because they could. "Options," Jake said. "Can we help the survivors?" Ryan looked at his tactical display and shook his head. "Sir, we're one ship against 50. Each of their vessels could probably destroy us in a few minutes. If we attack, we'll just die without helping anyone." "What about the people still alive down there?" Dr. Rodriguez checked her sensors. "I'm reading about 2 million life signs left on the planet, Commander, but they're getting weaker. The hegemony is using some kind of poison gas. The survivors won't last much longer." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were good people, all of them. They had joined the space fleet to explore new worlds and meet new friends among the stars. Instead, they were watching genocide happen right in front of them. On the Oz. Main screen, another group of refugee ships tried to escape the planet. The hegemony ships chased them down like hunters chasing rabbits. Jake watched families die and felt something break inside his chest. "Lisa," he said, his voice very quiet but very steady. "Open a channel to Earth. Full emergency priority. Connect me to every human colony, every ship, every space station. I want everyone to see this." "Sir?" Lisa looked confused. "Do it, now." Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. Soon, she nodded. "You're connected to the entire human communication network, Commander. Everyone can hear you." Jake stood up and faced the main screen. He knew that right now, billions of humans across space were watching him. Leaders on Earth, families on Mars, miners in the asteroid belt, and explorers on the edge of human space. "We're all listening. My name is Commander Jake Morrison of the Hughes Valiant," he began. "I'm broadcasting from the Kepler 442 system, where we are watching 50 alien warships commit genocide against a peaceful species called the Cytherians." He gestured to the main screen, which showed the burning planets. 24 billion. People lived in this system yesterday. Now there are 2 million left, and they're dying while we watch. The attackers are called the hegemony. They have better weapons and bigger ships than us. But they're not just winning a war. They're murdering families for fun. Jake's voice got harder. "We always said we wouldn't interfere in alien conflicts. We said it wasn't our business. But I'm looking at children being hunted down and killed by monsters. And I can't just fly away and pretend I didn't see it." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "I'm requesting immediate military support. Not to start a war, but to stop a genocide. If we let this happen without trying to help, what does that make us?" The communication ended, and Jake sat down in his command chair. His crew stared at him with a mixture of respect and worry. "Commander," Danny said quietly, "you just asked Earth to start the first interstellar war in human history." "No," Jake replied, watching another group of Cytherian refugees get destroyed on the screen. "I asked them to finish one." Over the next few hours, the Valiant stayed hidden at the edge of the system while Jake waited for a response from Earth. He used the time to record everything the hegemony ships were doing. He wanted proof of their crimes. Finally, Lisa's communications board lit up like a Christmas tree. "Commander, I'm getting responses from everywhere. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, the deep space fleets. They're all saying the same thing." "Which is?" Lisa smiled through her tears. "Help is coming, sir. Lots of help." On Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the United Earth Assembly. The huge meeting room was packed with representatives from every human colony and nation. Everyone was talking at once, their voices mixing into a loud buzz of anger and fear. "Order," the president shouted, hitting her gavel on the desk. The room went quiet. We all saw Commander Morrison's transmission. We all know what's happening in the Kepler system. The question is simple. What do we do about it? Senator Bob Williams from the Mars colonies stood up. "Madam President, this could start a war with aliens we know nothing about. We could be putting all of humanity at risk." "And if we do nothing," replied Senator Maria Santos from Earth, "we're telling the galaxy that humans don't care when innocent people are murdered. Is that the message we want to send?" President Carter looked around the room. She had been in politics for 30 years, but she had never faced a decision this big. What they chose to do in the next few minutes would affect every human being alive. "I've been reading reports from our deep space scouts," she said. "This hegemony empire, controls hundreds of star systems. They've been conquering peaceful species for thousands of years. If we don't stop them now, how long before they come for us? She pressed a button on her desk, and the main screen showed the burning Cytherian worlds. Look at those planets. Look at what these monsters do to civilizations that can't fight back. Are we going to let that happen to other innocent people? The vote took exactly 12 minutes. It was unanimous. Every single representative voted yes. The motion passes. President Carter announced. Operation Righteous Fury is approved. Admiral Sullivan, you have complete authority to use any resources necessary. Across human space, the response was immediate and massive. On Luna, the huge shipyards that built spacecraft went into full production mode. Workers who had been building peaceful exploration ships suddenly found themselves installing weapons and armor instead. On Mars, General Pete Hamilton watched thousands of soldiers board transport ships. These were not ordinary troops. They were the descendants of people who had learned to fight in the harshest places in the solar system. Mars had lower gravity than Earth, but its storms could strip the skin off an unprotected person. The asteroid. Miners were used to working in environments that would kill most people in seconds. You know what we're going into? General Hamilton asked Colonel Susan Torres as she checked her equipment. A fight, sir. The question is whether we're tough enough to win it. We're humans, the general replied. We're tough enough. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Dr. Kevin Wu was working in his laboratory. He was humanity's best weapons designer, and he had been studying the images from the Kepler system. The hegemony ships had energy shields that could stop most attacks. Their armor was thick and strong. Their weapons could destroy a human ship with one shot. If they want to play with fancy energy weapons, Dr. Wu muttered as he worked, let's see how they handle good old-fashioned rocks thrown really, really fast. He was building a new kind of gun that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The bullets would hit so hard and so fast that energy shields would not have time to stop them back in the Kepler system. Commander Morrison watched the massacre continue while he waited for help. The hegemony ships were taking their time, enjoying their work. They would attack a group of survivors, then wait and watch them suffer before finishing them off. Human Morrison, came a voice over the radio. It was one of the Cytherian survivors, speaking through their translation computer. My name is Veltar. I am a scientist. I study stars and planets. Hello, Veltar, Jake replied. Are you safe? Safe is not a word that means anything anymore, the alien said sadly. My family is dead. My city is burned. My world is dying. But I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For caring. In all the galaxy, no species has ever tried to help strangers. Before. The strong eat the weak. That is the law of space. But you humans are different. Jake looked at the main screen, where he could see human ships beginning to arrive at the edge of the system. First came a few destroyers, then cruisers, then bigger. Ships that he had never seen before. Hold on, Veltar, Jake said into the radio. Help is coming. The hegemony has never been defeated, Veltar warned. They are too strong. They have too many ships. Maybe, Jake replied, watching more human vessels drop out of hyperspace. But they've never fought humans before. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived on the biggest ship Jake had ever seen. It was called the U's Warhammer, and it looked like someone had taken a city and covered it with guns. Behind it came hundreds of other ships, destroyers, cruisers, carriers full of fighter planes, and transport ships packed with soldiers. Commander Morrison, the Admiral's voice came over the radio. Good work. Now let's finish this. Jake looked at his crew. They had been scared and outnumbered for days, watching helpless as innocent people died. Now they were part of the biggest human fleet ever assembled. All ships, Admiral Sullivan broadcast to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Sullivan. We came here to stop a genocide. We came here to save innocent lives. And we came here to show the galaxy what happens when someone picks on people who can't fight back. She paused, and Jake could imagine her looking at the hegemony ships that were still casually murdering refugees. Today, the galaxy learns that humanity doesn't like bullies. All ships prepare for battle. Let's go save some lives. The human fleet began to move forward, and Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The hegemony was about to learn what happened when you made humans angry. Commander Ziegther stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer. He was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. His forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel, and his mouth was full of teeth, designed for ripping flesh. He was the perfect example of what the hegemony valued: strength, cruelty, and the will to use both. "My lord," said one of his officers, "we are detecting ships approaching the system. Unknown design." Ziegther looked at the tactical display with amusement. 50 small ships were moving toward his fleet. They looked crude and primitive compared to hegemony vessels. Their hulls were thick and ugly, like they had been built by children playing with metal. "Primitives," he clicked to his crew. "Their ships are pathetic. Their formation is sloppy. This will be entertaining." The lead primitive ship was broadcasting something on common frequencies. Ziegther listened to the translation with growing amusement. "Hegemony vessels, you are ordered to stop your attack and leave immediately. This is your only warning." Gther's laughter sounded like breaking glass. A warning? From these tiny ships? He had been killing entire civilizations for 300 years. No one had ever threatened him before. "Send them a reply," he ordered. The Devourer's main plasma cannon charged up and fired. The beam was hot enough to melt planets, and had never failed to destroy anything it hit. Ziegther watched it strike the lead human ship, expecting to see it explode in a cloud of fire dot. Instead, the beam hit some kind of shield and scattered like light hitting a mirror. The human ship was completely undamaged. "Impossible," Ziegther hissed. "Nothing can stop a direct hit from our main cannon." On the U's Warhammer, Admiral Kate Sullivan smiled coldly as her ship's experimental shields absorbed the alien attack. The energy from the plasma beam was captured and fed into the ship's power systems, actually making them stronger. "Well," she said to her crew, "can't say I didn't try to be polite. All ships, you are free to engage. Show them what happens when you mess with innocent people." Fleet Captain Tony Rivera was coordinating the attack from his position next to the Admiral. "Ma'am, enemy ships are moving to surround us. They're trying to use their numbers advantage." "Let them come," Sullivan replied. "The closer they get, the easier this will be." What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy changed. Forever, the human ships moved in ways that should have been impossible. They spun and twisted through space like dancers, avoiding enemy fire while closing the distance to their targets. The hegemony had superior numbers and better weapons, but they had never fought an enemy that came from a world trying to kill them. Every single day, Earth was a planet with crushing gravity, poisonous storms, and radiation that would destroy most life forms. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most aliens before they could take a breath. Captain Nina Bell commanded the destroyer U.E.'s Reaper. She led her squadron in a charge straight through the middle of the enemy formation, her ship taking hits that would have vaporized most vessels. But human ships were built like the humans themselves, tough, stubborn, and nearly impossible to kill. "This is Reaper," she broadcast as her ship's hull glowed red from repeated impacts. "We've got a hole in their line. All squadrons, pour through." The human weapons were different from anything the hegemony had seen before. Instead of energy beams, they fired solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. The bullets hit with the force of meteors, punching through energy shields like they were made of paper. Jeekthur watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by these primitive ships. His plasma cannons could not penetrate their shields. His armor could not stop their bullets. His ships, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, were being destroyed by vessels that looked like they had been built in a scrapyard. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his tactical officer. "These ships are crude. Their technology is inferior." "My lord," the officer replied, his voice shaking, "their ships may be simple, but they work. And they seem to be designed to survive in conditions that would destroy our vessels." On the planet below, the first human dropships were landing in the middle of active combat zones. Colonel Susan Torres led the first assault battalion directly into a group of hegemony soldiers who were herding Cytherian civilians toward execution sites. The hegemony ground troops were 2 meters tall, armed with energy weapons and covered in armor that could stop most bullets. They had conquered dozens of worlds and never lost a battle. They had never fought. Marines who trained on worlds where the air itself was toxic and the gravity could crush bones. Torres watched her soldiers advance through weapon fire that should have killed them. Their armor was designed to work in the vacuum of space, underwater, in acid rain, and in temperatures that would freeze or cook most life forms. Energy weapons that could melt steel barely slowed them down when a human marine got close enough to touch a hegemony soldier. The fight was over. Hundreds of years of evolution on a deadly world had made humans stronger, faster, and tougher than most species in the galaxy. "Command, this is ground team," Torres reported as her forces systematically destroyed the enemy ground presence. "Recommend immediate medical evacuation for Cytherian survivors. These people have been through hell, but they're alive." In space, the battle was turning into a massacre. The hegemony fleet that had been casually committing genocide was being destroyed by ships they had dismissed as primitive. Of the 50 vessels that had started the day killing innocent civilians, only 12 remained, and they were trying to flee. Admiral Sullivan watched the enemy ships attempt to escape and opened a channel to them. "Hegemony vessels," she broadcast, "you came here to finish a job. Let us finish ours." The human fleet pursued the fleeing ships with relentless efficiency. There would be no escape, no mercy, no second chances. Seek their ship was the last to die. As human fighters swarmed around the Devourer, punching holes in its hull with their primitive but effective weapons, he sent one final message to Hegemony Command. "The humans are not primitive," he transmitted. "They are predators, they are killers, and they are coming for you." The transmission ended when the Devourer exploded in a ball of fire. The battle was over in 47 minutes. The genocide had been stopped. 3 days after the battle, Commander Jake Morrison walked through what used to be the largest city on the Cytherian homeworld. The destruction was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Entire neighborhoods had been turned to ash. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were nothing but rubble. The air still smelled like smoke and death, but among the ruins there was hope. Human soldiers were helping Cytherian survivors find their families. Human doctors were treating the wounded with medicines that worked even on alien biology. Human engineers were setting up temporary shelters and clean water systems. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw his people working to save lives. Dr. Amy Rodriguez met him at the temporary medical station. Her uniform was dirty, and she looked exhausted, but she was smiling. "How many?" Jake asked. "We've evacuated 1.8 million. Survivors to the colony ships," she reported. "Medical teams think we can save about 90% of them. The poison gas the hegemony used was terrible, but we got here in time." Jake nodded. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Veltar approached them, walking slowly on legs that were still healing from hegemony torture. The Cytherian scientist was thin and covered in gray fur. His large eyes reminded Jake of a deer, but there was intelligence there that was clearly not animal. "Human Morrison," Veltar said through the translation device. "My people have sent messages to others across the galaxy. We have told them what happened here, what your species did for strangers." "We did what anyone should do," Jake replied. "We stopped people from being murdered." "No," Veltar said gently. "In this galaxy, no one helps strangers. The strong take what they want. The weak suffer and die. This has been the way for 10,000 years, until you came." Admiral Kate Sullivan joined them. Her uniform was still marked with burn marks from the battle, and she looked like she had not slept in days. She carried a tablet computer full of reports. "Commander, I thought you should know. We're getting messages from 17 different species. Word is spreading about what happened here. Some are asking for our protection from the hegemony. Others want to form alliances with us." Jake looked around at the ruins of the city. "What do you think this means for humanity?" "It means the galaxy is about to change," Sullivan replied. "For 10,000 years, bullies like the hegemony have ruled. Through fear, they built their empire on the idea that might makes right." She pointed toward the medical station where human doctors were saving Cytherian children. Time to show them what right backed by might can do. A group of young Cytherians ran past them, chasing a ball that one of the Marines had given them. They were laughing, the first laughter Jake had heard on this world since he arrived. One of them tripped and scraped his knee. Without thinking, the human soldier who had given them the ball picked up the alien child and carried him to the medical station. "That's what I don't understand," said Veltar, watching the scene. "Your species travels across the galaxy to help people you've never met. You risk your lives for strangers. You spend your resources on people who cannot repay you. Why?" Jake thought about the question. He had been asked it a lot over the past few days, by his crew, by other officers, even by himself. Why had humans dropped everything to help aliens they had never seen before? "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because we couldn't live with ourselves if we had let it happen. But you could have been killed. Your entire species could have been destroyed if the hegemony had won." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But what's the point of being alive if you don't use your life to help others?" Veltar stared at him for a long moment. "Your species is very strange, human Morrison. In a galaxy full of predators, you choose to be protectors. In a universe where the strong eat the weak, you choose to make the weak strong." Admiral Sullivan smiled. "That's what makes us human." Over the next few hours, Jake watched as the last of the Cytherian survivors were loaded onto human transport ships. They would be taken to new homes in human space, where they could rebuild their civilization in safety. Some would choose to stay and help other refugees. Others would return to space exploration, their original love. All of them would live as the final transport lifted off from the dead world. Jake composed his report to Earth. He kept it simple. Mission accomplished. The innocent are safe. The guilty have been stopped. Humanity stands ready to do it again. He sent the message and turned to watch the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were receiving word of what had happened in the Kepler system. Some would be inspired, others would be terrified. The hegemony would be furious and would probably try to get revenge. Jake was not worried. Humans had been dealing with bullies for their entire history. They had learned long ago that the only way to stop a bully was to stand up to them, no matter how big or scary they seemed. "Sir," said Lisa Grant, approaching with a communication device, "we're getting a message from the Cytherian refugee ship. Veltar wants to speak with you." Jake took the device. Yes, Veltar? Human Morrison, before we part ways, I wanted you to know something. My people have been studying your species since we met. We have been trying to understand you. And we have decided that you are not like other predator species. You do not hunt for territory or resources. You hunt for justice. The galaxy has many words for creatures like you, but we have chosen our favorite, which is... Veltar's voice carried something that might have been laughter. We call you the Deathworld Guardians, the species that learned to survive in hell, so they could protect those who live in heaven. Jake smiled. I like that. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, predator species that had ruled through fear for millennia found themselves looking over their shoulders. In hidden colonies and refugee camps, prey species whispered a new word with something they had never felt before. Hope. The age of human intervention had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same dot in the depths of space. The Hegemony Empire began to mobilize for war. They had lost 50 ships and an entire invasion fleet, but they had millions more. They would crush these humans and make an example of them. They did not yet understand that they had just picked a fight with a species that had spent millions of years learning how to survive against impossible odds. They were about to discover what happened when you threatened the people that Deathworld Guardians had chosen to protect. The real war was just beginning.